I am a massive Dragon's Rising Season 2 fan, so naturally it's one of the seasons I look to discuss the most, but one of the aspects that I feel like is consistently talked about rather negatively is Nokt. To briefly summarise, Nokt is a corrupted wolfman from the wilderness who, with the other members of the Forbidden Five, brought upon a great amount of pain and suffering to his land, which was done through the power of Shatterspin of the Wolf Masks. Shatterspin is really cool to me because it serves as a manifestation of strength. For example, when Aaron does Pinjitzu, him going against the motion of the universe is represented through the red streaks that resemble Shatterspin in his tornado. The primary technique that Nokt uses being a representation of strength is awesome in my opinion, and it's a great first introduction to him and immediately tells us what his deal is. Rising Ninja serves as a really good introduction to Nokt in terms of how much of a threat he is to the ninja in that episode. When Nokt first comes through the portal, he presents himself as an immediate threat to the ninja and almost banishes Nia to the nether space. However, when we next see him, he's immediately subdued by Ras, who implants a control device into his head. I think this is a really interesting position to put Nokt in, because he doesn't immediately take control of Raz's whole operation, and is instead put in a position where he is subservient to him. I also want to note that this happens to Nokt because he tried to attack Raz out of anger, immediately showing that he's overtaken by emotions easily. I think this is something that he could really get some mileage out of in the future, and I really hope we see it in his future appearances in Dragon's Rising Season 3. The next time we see Nokt, he's training in the Shadow Dojo with Cinder, where he beats him in a training fight and almost takes him out before Raz intervenes. The main thing this scene does for me is show that Nokt is an extremely conflict-driven individual no matter what situation he's in, stating that
everything is war
after a training match. Nokt, and by extension the rest of the five being so conflict-driven, is definitely something that was set up a lot in part 1, but I think this line is a really good way of showing it again, because he feels the need to exert himself and win every single fight no matter the context, treating it like a war. This line also hints at a potential future realm war in Dragon's Rising, which has some really cool implications in my opinion. The next portion of this video is going to be divided into two distinct parts. One of them will be on Nokt's plotting and skulking during the tournament arc, and the other will be on his power level throughout the tournament fights. Starting off with Nokt's scheming, I thought it was pretty solid overall. We see Nokt rather close to Jordana throughout the tournament, and seeing them interact adds a good bit of mystery to his character, which was really good to see continue after his release from the nether space. The twist of Jordana being possessed by rocks of the Forbidden Five is something that I'm pretty sure most of us went into this part knowing, but the reveal itself was built up in a pretty compelling way aside from some of the god-awful brother-sister dialogue we get from the two. Seeing Nokt skulk around with his shadows during the tournament and listening on conversations is also just really cool in my opinion, and definitely gives him a good presence aside from just his fights. Speaking of, let's move on to those. Nokt's first fight of the tournament is against Tox, who he absolutely destroys in the arena. I mean, he just beats her down. She stood no chance. Absolute brutality. On a more serious note, what I really appreciate about this fight is that it provides an explanation for how he fares in the rest of his fights during the tournament. In this fight, Nokt damn near kills Tox, ignoring the game and going straight for the kill, leading her to be carried away in a stretcher. Roby has to put a halt to the fight because of Nokt's ruthlessness and says that if he does this again he'll be disqualified from the games. This moment is really overlooked in my opinion because it very clearly shows that he has to hold back in some capacity to be able to free the other members of his family once the games are over. Nokt's next fight against Nia is a really strong one in my opinion, and both of them make a really good showing here. One thing that I want to highlight is the interaction they have in the middle of a fight, which is really funny, but it leads to another aspect of Nokt's character that I really enjoy, his ability to be a smug asshole. I think it's a cool little addition, because I imagine that being one of the strongest warriors of his time, he was probably able to make whatever comment he wants without any regard towards others, and that's really cool in my opinion, and I really like how it carries over into the tournament. This fight also establishes that Nokt and Nia are about evenly matched, with Nia just about beating Nokt in the fight, but Nokt wins regardless because of her rigging of the games. I think the Forbidden Five being similarly powered to the ninja is totally fine, and this match being as close as it is when Nia has what is essentially the perfect counter to Shatterspin adds a lot of tension to any future fights that might occur, and is a really good way to make the fight feel like worthy opponents to the ninja. Nokt's next proper fight is against Lloyd, and admittedly this fight's a bit washed, I'm gonna be for real. I'm fine with a fight being called early by Blecht here, but realistically Nokt should have cleared Lloyd with no effort, because it starts off really strong with Nokt going for Lloyd at full speed, and then he just kind of stands around trying to blast Lloyd with his powers without moving at all. Like seriously, I'm not even joking, he takes 0 steps after he moves to the other side of the arena to get Lloyd. I think it's by far Nokt's weakest showing of the tournament, and realistically Lloyd should have stood no chance here. I think Nokt's fight against Sora is overall pretty solid. I think them both having trouble against each other is pretty plausible since they both had so many elemental powers, and they definitely both made a good show of their abilities here. The one thing that really irks me about this fight is the stupid tech bee. It's so goofy that this ancient warlord is getting beaten down by a bee. It's so silly, man. Other than that, I think this fight is pretty good for him. I think him going straight for the shatter spin against Sora is really cool, showing that he really isn't holding back at all. It's a solid showing all around for Nokt, and doesn't portray him as too much of a bum except for the B part of the fight, which admittedly is rather rough. I'll give you that, Nokt power scalers. Now on to the finale, where all of the fighting and scenes where Nokt is plotting and fighting comes to a head. During this final episode, Nokt takes on all four of the main characters at once, and it's such a strong showing of him, I'm gonna be for real. One of the best of the season. Seeing him almost effortlessly take on all of the ninja was so cool, and he absolutely rinses them. When Kai comes through the portal, he does a pretty decent job against Nokt, but still gets beaten down and damn near killed by him. Nokt only losing because Roby took the powers away from him with the Elemental Cup, which in my opinion was a pretty good way to resolve the fight without it feeling like a cheap win for the ninja. Overall, I thought this was a really amazing showing of Nokt. I liked it a lot and thought this was a really solid payoff for the planning and fighting over the course of the tournament. Now that we've been over my thoughts of Nokt in the tournaments, I want to talk about what they should do with him in future seasons. Now, I know I've just spent an entire video glazing him and saying that I don't perceive him as a bum in the tournament, but I think it's absolutely the route they should take with his character. For those who don't know, that is probably most of you watching this video, my good friend Geno is currently working on a Ninjago story called Brutality, which focuses on the Forbidden Five before and after the events of Dragon's Rising Season 2. It's an absolutely fantastic piece of writing and I highly recommend giving it a read. A link to Brutality and all of Geno's socials will be in the description of this video. Please go check them out. Geno's an absolutely amazing guy and I absolutely love what he's done with Brutality. It's an excellent expansion of the world and characters that was introduced to us in Dragon's Rising Season 2. Genuinely amazing stuff. Please go check it out, I beg you. Onto the contents of Brutality, it really leans into the idea of Nokt being the bum of the group and he gets constantly ridiculed and mocked by the others. And rightfully so, because he is an absolute cretin. One example of this that I really like is him constantly describing things as trying to fit a square peg into a circular hole, and he can't decide whether it's an analogy, a philosophy, or a metaphor. He's an absolutely moronic egomaniac, and I love it for him. It's so cool, man. I would be completely happy with them going down this route with his character, because imagine if the guy the ninja just had like an entire tournament fighting against where they almost lost to him multiple times is the weakest one of the group. I think that would do absolute wonders for building up the five as a threat, because like we've got this one guy who's insanely powerful and the other four are just like way stronger and this guy's just like a fucking bum. That'd be so cool, man. As for the rest of the five in Brutality, they're absolutely amazing. I won't go into too much detail because I want you guys to go out and read this for yourselves, but the way it builds up the five as a dark mirror to the ninja is so cool and makes them feel like a really fleshed out faction and really well written characters. For example, Zarkt, who we met briefly during Season 2 Part 2, is masterfully written in Brutality, and his dynamic with Nokt is easily the highlight of the whole thing for me, because the two just hate each other with a burning passion. It's so funny. And seeing their rivalry evolve and even lead into the plot of Dragon's Rising Season 2 is so satisfying to watch. The other members of the five are really well done too. They haven't left as much of an impression on me, but that's by no means a bad thing, because I'm sure that their focus chapters will come at some point in the near future. For the meantime, their characters and dynamics are really compelling and interesting to learn about, and I just really like how they function as a group and bounce off of each other. It's so good, man. Obviously, I don't need the show to take the exact same route as Brutality does, because Brutality isn't canon to the show. But what I do want is for the relationships of the Forbidden Five to hold a candle to what's in Brutality, because the five might end up being rather uninteresting villains otherwise, and I really don't want them to be one of the most boring Dragon's Rising factions, because they have so much potential. So, there we go. Those were my thoughts on Nokt and what they should do with him moving forward. I want to thank everyone who's watched this video and watched the last one. The support means so much to me. I have another video in the works that should be coming soon. So, hey, if you like what I'm doing, consider subscribing. It would mean a lot and would really help grow the channel and potentially reach more audiences. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means so much, and see you next time. You know, Ras got really unlucky when Nokt came out of the portal. I mean, like, I really wouldn't want Nokt on my team either. What an absolutely useless barrel of monkey sponge.
When you feel tight, look at yourself. Inside your heart, you will find the special place to unlock.